Hello Kaiju United, Nick Crispino here reporting from New York Comic-Con, and we got a special one today. I'm sitting here with the legendary Bear McCreary, composer of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. How are you?
I'm good, man. This is gonna be fun.
First off, thanks for sitting down with us. I know you've got a busy weekend, so we're just gonna jump right into it.
Let's do it.
So talk to me about recreating Ifukube's Godzilla and Mothra themes. Was it easier than making the other tracks, given you had pre-existing material to work with, or did they present their own set of unique challenges?
Easier, harder, are difficult words to ascribe to this process. When I came on board King of the Monsters, we have these primary characters. Godzilla, you have Mothra, Ghidorah, Rodan, and then the human characters, but whatever. We have these stars.
We don't care about them.
Yeah, no, we care about them. Although, now that I think about it, I wrote a theme, I think, for Monarch as an entity, but not the human characters. I was focusing on these four, and the first thing I thought was to bring in as much of the classic music as made sense, and revisited Akira Ifukube's timeless music as a starting point. But I also wrote original themes. I mean, really, it was sort of like an experimental process where I wrote a theme for Godzilla, and then I wrote I arranged Ifukube's March. For Ghidorah, I wrote an original theme because I didn't find any material in the canon that would tell the exact story we had. Because that was the challenge, right?
Yeah.
It's not just recreating the movies of the past. We have a very specific story we're telling now. And I need the themes to do certain things. Mothra, obviously, and Rodan. There was some thematic material for that character. Ended up keeping my original material for Rodan and Ghidorah, and keeping the classic material, right, for Godzilla and Mothra. Once that decision was made, it's like, the reason to go back to my starting statement, was it difficult? It's like you've got one of the best pieces of film music ever written. Is it difficult to make that sound good? No. It's just a matter of like, you just do it, and then the icing on the cake was then doing the Blue Oyster Cult song.
Well, that is a perfect segue into my next question. So speaking of covers, Blue Oyster Cults, what led to the decision of getting Serge Tankian to do the vocals?
That was all me. I didn't tell them. I didn't tell the producers. I didn't tell the director. I didn't tell the studio. I just did it. I called Serge and I said, Serge and I have been friends for years. And I said, hey man, I want to do a cover of my favorite Blue Oyster Cult song, Godzilla, for this movie. Would you sing it? And I also reached out to my friend Brendan Small from Metalocalypse. I said, would you play on it? And I want to get the guys from your record. I want to get Gene Hoglan on drums and Brian Beller on bass. I lined all this stuff up, and meanwhile, I'm supposed to be finishing the score to the movie. We were coming down to the wire.
Yeah.
I think if the producers knew I was working on anything other than finishing these cues, they would not have been happy, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't tell them. And the day before I get on the plane to go to London to record the score, we have our final cue review. Mike Dougherty sitting next to me. All the legendary Warner Brothers execs were crowded in this little screening room. We look at the final revisions. I think the scene right before the nuke goes off underwater, there's that beautiful cue. I rewrote that. A few other changes I made. And they were like, okay, great. Gave me my final notes. They signed off and everybody starts to get up. And I go, oh, actually, guys, hang on. I forgot. There's one other thing I want to play you. There's one other thing I want to play you. Sit down. And I go, I got this idea for the end credits. Mm-hmm. And I hit play. And the music, starts here, the wave file starts here.
Yep.
And the bar starts going like this. And Mike Dougherty looks at me. And a second before it starts, he goes, Blue Oyster Cult. And then it was, and I was like, whoa, I get chills telling the story. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. And then Serge's voice comes in, and everybody's like, what? And the demo is basically what you heard, right? Like I didn't get any notes on that song. It was like, that's what it was. So the addendum to that story, Peter Afterman is the music suit for Legendary. Great guy, I love this guy. And he had to deal with all the licensing. We had to license from Toho. Toho had to grant us each usage of Godzilla, Mothra. It wasn't just like I had carte blanche.
Yeah.
It was
Toho's
more,
very protective of their
Yeah,
properties.
absolutely. And it's more like when you order a drink at a bar, it's like if they refill your drink, you're paying for it again.
Yeah.
So it's like every usage costs money.
Oh. Okay.
Every usage. It's not just a blanket, you get to use it. And that's what was great is like Toho, when they heard my demos, they were also like, okay, you can use it twice. Then it was like, but we want more. Can we use it? What about 4 times, 5 times? Pretty please. Pretty please. But it was also like, but check out the demos. As the demos came in, they were like, okay, that's cool. But then they also had to clear the Blue Oyster Cult song.
Right.
It was written by this guy, Buck Dharma.
The legendary Buck Dharma.
The legend. So they cleared it. The movie comes out. Sarah just singing it. Death Clock, the band, is playing it. It's Brendan Small on guitar, Brian Beller on bass, Gene Hoglan on drums. And a couple of days later, I get a phone call. My assistant calls me. She goes, I have Buck Dharma on the line. And I go, stop messing with me. She goes, no, for real. And I go, for real? And I pull the car over and I'm like, hello? It's Buck on the phone. And he tells me how much he loved my version of Godzilla.
That's awesome.
Then he tells me that he had long given up hope. This song came out in 1977, 1976. It had been 40 years. He had long given up hope that it would ever appear in a Godzilla movie, which it had never done, ever. So my movie was the first mainstream Godzilla movie in the Western world to use Ifukube's March and the Mothra song. And it was the first time Blue Oyster Cult, with their hit song Godzilla, ended up in Godzilla.
That's got to make you feel so
Dude,
good.
I felt so good, and Buck felt so good, right? You could hear this gratitude. And in fact, every name I just listed, Brian Beller, Brendan Small, Gene Hoglan, Serge Tankian, and Buck Dharma, all ended up on my solo record, The Singularity, which was born from these sessions, the Godzilla session. I drove home the day I recorded that. I was so buzzed. I was in the studio with Serge and with Death Clock doing this incredible riff. And then I started getting down. I started getting depressed. And by the time I pulled into the driveway after driving home from the studio in Hollywood, I was almost like, I honestly was on the edge of tears. I was like, what's wrong? And then I realized it had taken me 15 years of working in this business to find a movie that gave me the excuse to bring those people together. Do I have to wait another 15 years for that to ever happen again? I want to do a song with Serge Tankian and Gene Hoglan and maybe Buck Dharma, right? And then it hit me like, honestly, it was like an epiphany. I was like, what if I just wrote more songs? What if I don't wait for a movie? And that was the beginning of what became my solo record, The Singularity.
Awesome. Well, my next question was there anything specifically from this album that you derived to make The Singularity? But you already answered that, so I think...
There it is there, yeah.
So at Kaiju United, we are big on community, and we asked the fans to submit some questions to ask you.
Love it. All right, let's do it.
Derek of the Dead 26 asks, if you could make the King of the Monsters soundtrack again, would you make any changes, and if so, what?
Yes. My only regret, and it was just, it was out of my hands, we could not use the Mothra lyrics. And my solution to this was I set our Mothra track in the same tempo and same key as the most famous recording, knowing that somebody on YouTube would put it together, which they did. It's out there. It came,
it's almost as certain that fans will do that.
But what I'm saying is, I wanted you to do that. That was because, as it turned out at the 11th hour, the rights to the lyric, I don't even know, but they obviously weren't available, right? Like, when you're digging into rights for music, it's crazy town. And you never understand how complicated it is. So that was one of those things. I had a vocal recorded. We couldn't do it. So if I could do it again, easy. I would. Do we have an extra week to work this out? Who has those rights? Let's do it. That was like the one that got away, right? Like the Mothra lyric. But fans came through. They fixed it for me.
They always come through. Godzilla fans, you always come through.
Totally.
Jojo Rodriguez 25 asks, why do you think the Godzilla theme is so iconic?
The Godzilla theme to me is in the same category as James Bond's theme, as Star Wars. it actually predates those themes. It is the first, and arguably then one of the most important cinematic universe themes that exists. So it blows my mind that you would make a Godzilla movie without it. It blows my mind, right? Because it's like making a James Bond movie. The question is, how do you use that theme? And everybody puts their spin on it. You know, Star Wars is an interesting example because of the influx of shows, they are deviating, I think, from what John Williams crafted in those movies, and it's up for debate whether you think that's a good thing or not.
Yeah.
And you can just see where I'm at. It's like, if I have a say, like, we're using that theme. I think it's interesting because it wasn't always Godzilla's theme. It was the theme for like the heroic theme.
Yeah.
Right? So in the original film, and in -1, probably elsewhere, but those two spring to mind, it's sort of a theme for either the military facing down Godzilla, or just sort of like the majesty of the situation. It's not necessarily like his theme. There
Or
can
like
have
the
tragic
impending doom. Yeah.
exactly. But you know, for King of the Monsters, it was easy because it's like he's the hero. He's our boy. So you want to hear that. But you know, full disclosure, I wrote a different theme partly because I didn't know if we would get it. So I had to be prepared for an alt. But the whole time I was like, please don't make me use my theme. You know, I want to hear the Ifukube. I want to hear what everybody else wants to hear.
All right, last one. So it's evident that the fans want you back because out of all the questions we received, I'd say at least 90% of them were some variation of, would you return to score another MonsterVerse movie? So would you?
I mean, sure, man. You guys got my number. I'm around.
Well, Bear, thank you so much for sitting down with us. This is greatly appreciated. This has been one of Kaiju United's dream interviews, so
thank you so
can't
much.
even thank you enough.
Appreciate it.